A lot of times when people read in the Bible, you're not necessarily reading it to be like, oh, this is a business like principle.
A lot of times we think God is not speaking, but it's because we're not looking with light and we're not looking with revelation.
You're speaking a lot about fulfilling your purpose. And so how do you think that people can go about finding their purpose?
A lot of us are, as children of God who have been through trauma, whether molestation, rape, abuse, rejection, whatever it is, we're like these eagles with so much potential and purpose. But because we've been caged for so long, we're just limited and we don't know how to spread our wings. I don't want to be wealthy just to have a nice house and sit down and play patty cake. I want to be able to, bless the community and do what be God's hands and feet.
Some people might hear this and say, well, that's great, but other people might hear it and say, well, how is this different than, the prosperity, gospel?
If there's a prosperity gospel, is there a poverty gospel? I mean, gospel means good news. So is poverty good news, or is the word that says, above all, I wish that you would prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Busy Moms Get It Done podcast. I am pleased to welcome DeShanti Genus. She is the mighty woman behind the Purpose Eagle Network. She's also the author of Bible and Business Lens Expository. She is a wife, a mom, a podcaster, a life coach, a content creator, so much, so much, so much, a busy mom. Thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.
So I usually start this by just going into a general sense of like asking people like, what was your motherhood journey like? How did you think it would be, and what was your reality?
Yeah, so motherhood, I've been a mom for about 4 years now. I can't even believe that, but it's been definitely a learning journey. Every day you live and you learn. I believe childhood, you go through different seasons. And so there's the beginning portion where everything is completely new. It feels a little scary. But then there's almost this like supernatural grace that I believe God gives you to be able to maneuver throughout the season. So it's been beautiful. Some scary moments, but it's been beautiful overall. So
So did you start your coaching business before you became a mom, or was it during that whole process together?
it all feels like a blend, honestly. But no, my coaching started about 2 years after I had after I had my daughter. So yeah.
What drives you in the different areas that I mentioned earlier? Obviously, a businesswoman, a wife, a podcaster, a content creator. You also teach. So like as in your church, so what is all of these things that's like driving you and that's helping you to keep going in all of these areas?
Yeah, I mean, I just say all glory to God because even as you're saying those things, I can't even. Sometimes it's hard for me to even think that that's me, but I literally just say that it's only the grace of God. I believe that it's the grace of God and it's the passion to do His work, and I think that that's really what drives me at the end of the day. A specific story I can give you is in 2023 when one of my cousins passed away. I was talking about it on my YouTube channel this morning. It was my husband's cousin actually, and like my god brother. In the Black community we have god brothers and sisters, but it was someone that I grew up with, and he was only 29 when he passed away. And 2 or 3 days after he passed away, I and some of the people from my church went to Israel. And when we went there, we got into it was beautiful on a whole, but we went to specifically Nazareth. And when we got to Nazareth, we went into an olive press. And while we were there, I feel like the Lord was really talking to me about that whole experience. Like it would not leave me. And, um, he said to me that an olive in its natural state is beautiful, but until the olive is crushed, it can't necessarily produce the oil that it was always called to produce. And so it's in those seasons of hardship and crisis and the crushing where God can really, use us the way that he wants to use us, and share our story and our life with others. And I feel like in that moment of the crushing, when I lost my cousin and my husband lost my cousin, you know, there was this fire that I think that got stirred up in me, that, like, we're young. He was very young. And a lot of times we live our life just going through the motions, and not there's no drive to fulfill purpose. Um, I pray in the name of Jesus that we'll live till our, full life. But there's just the
Amen.
sense of we don't know when our last day would be. And so it's just a matter of fulfilling your purpose. And I've always had that drive since then to encourage young people specifically, to fulfill their purpose and, live life on purpose, and don't let life sit and just stress you out. But you live the life that you know that God has called you to live. So I think that besides faith and, God pushing me, those were like the driving forces. And that's where even the Purpose Eagle started. So, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the purpose eagle, but I feel like you're speaking a lot about fulfilling your purpose. And so, how do you think that people can go about finding their purpose? Because I feel like that's something that I grew up when I was growing up. Was like, you have to, fulfill your destiny. We have a destiny. We have a purpose. You're put in this life for a destiny, right? And so, and then there are people who are just like, well, I'm just gonna go with the flow,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. So, in what area, in what time did you was it at that point in 2023, after you went through that, did you realize that I do have a purpose? I do have a reason that I'm here and I have to go after it? Or have you always known like I have a purpose, but you're just like going as you're living your life?
Yeah. I think, purpose, there's a difference between your whole life's purpose and assignments. And
Mm,
I think a lot of times people are like, well, I don't know what my purpose is because I was doing this, but now I'm not. So was that truly my purpose? You know, I- am I, I'm confused. Who am I? But I have learned that your purpose, you'll never stop fulfilling your purpose. You'll never be at the end of it. You'll never really get into the depth of it until your last breath. But there are different assignments while you're fulfilling your purpose. So for me, I feel like as long as you, as cliche as it sounds, spend time in the presence of God, He will reveal to you in layers what your purpose is. He'll reveal to you what your assignments are in throughout different seasons. Um, but I think that initially, spending time in the presence of God, and obviously throughout your life, is where like the secret sauce is on how do I know what my purpose is? Who is it that God called me to be? Why would I go to you know, uh, a dealer
mm,
if my car has issues? Like, the dealer just sold me the car, but the manufacturer is the one that made it. And so,
mm.
if I want to know my purpose, I can't just go to the person that's preaching to me, find your purpose, find your purpose. I have to go to the one that created me. I have to say, well, God, who did you create me to be? Why am I on this earth? And so I think that it just really essentially starts with that, like getting to that still place and just asking God to show you who you are. So I hope I
I
answered
have
that.
No, you did. I do
Okay.
have to act because this is the Busy Mom Get It Done podcast. And I will say that I feel like perhaps my purpose shifted before I had kids. Did you
Yeah.
have that shift as well? And I think it's still shifting. Be honest, I think there are times when, at the beginning stage, it was just like, I just want to cuddle my kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then later on, I'm like, oh no, we gotta do other things. Do you feel like that happens naturally, or did that same thing happen to you?
Yeah, I think times and seasons really, because um as you can see, I've done a lot of different things even within the span of 4 or 5 years. Some of the things I've tried to slow down with, but I think again it just goes back to times and seasons. When I first like when I first found out I was pregnant with my daughter is when I had just released my first ever book.
Mm,
And at that time, I was not trying to be anybody's business coach. I was not, trying to do any podcasts. I wasn't doing any of that. I just knew that God had given me this book to write. I didn't even know who my target audience was really and truly. I didn't know the formalities behind even writing a book. I just knew again that there was something that was in me that I needed to share. And so after releasing my book and learning, okay, well, now that I released a book, I needed a DBA if I want to like separate the money that I get from my book from my personal account. Well, now I need to start looking into business. Well, if I need a DBA doing business ads, that means I need a name. And it kind of had me spiraling through these like different phases. And then I started vlogging during my pregnancy on YouTube. So I think that's where I became comfortable being in front of a camera because, you don't just naturally pick up a camera and like, hey world, here I am. I feel like there were just different seasons of preparation, getting used to knowing what it's like to have a business account, getting used to putting yourself on camera or the different angles or lighting. Granted, this is not great lighting today, but um, you know, just learning those different phases. And I feel like throughout that, I again learned my different assignments, and it made me not be so hard on myself with that too. And that's another story for another day, but I don't want to like delve away from that. But for sure, for me, assignments shifted absolutely. And I've also learned from many other moms that have been moms before me that you have to understand that there's no balance really, technically, as a mom. Like you just have to know when you have to show up more as a mom, or show up more as a wife, or show up more as a business person, show up more in consecration with God. It's just learning like times and seasons again. So yeah.
Yeah, times and seasons is definitely something that I go by too. I literally say, okay, this is the season we're in. If you know, some
Yeah.
seasons I'm going hard at work, and some season I'm not, and that's it. So you started Purpose Eagle. How did that come about? What need did you think you were missing that you believe this would fill?
Just I wanted to create a platform um that young people can come and showcase their talents and also be inspired outside of the four walls of a church, because I feel
Mm,
like inside church it's a very like sacred, solemn atmosphere. Like, you come for worship services, you come to give praise to God, you don't play around. Not anybody could be on the drums or you know what I mean? Like there's just such a consecrated place. But I wanted to create a space where young people can showcase their talents and also be inspired by others that are showcasing their talents. And that's where the Purpose Eagle came from. I didn't have the name wasn't originally the Purpose Eagle, it was Peace Essentials. And again, that was
mm,
just because that was my business name that I had for my books. But there was that wasn't the real name. But that's where the event came and the community was built in that. And that's where people I didn't want it to just be a concert either. I feel like everybody can have a concert, but not everybody sings or plays music. People have businesses. So I wanted to create a place where you can vend your products and services. There are some people that, do spoken words, or some people that do poems, or, different things. And I just wanted to, again, create that fun atmosphere where you can be inspired. There's so much of it in the world. I feel like, there are networking events everywhere. There are, all these places for young people to go, and they feel like, oh, the only place I can have fun is in the world. So I just wanted to create that um, platform for people. And then also with my cousin passing away, that's when that happened. So he passed away July, and our first event was August. So I feel like that was the fuel to the fire to be like, oh yeah, you need to get this done. And as a matter of fact, like there was no budget, there was no big grandiose planning. It was literally the Lord was like, use your backyard. It's gonna be sunny that day. How did I know? I had no idea, but I just felt like the Lord was really pushing us to have faith. And my husband was like, all right, I'll gather music. My husband plays music. So he said, I'll gather the musicians. And I knew the business people. So I said, I'll gather the business people. And we just had it in our backyard. So that's where that came from. but the name or the eagle aspect of it came from about like 4 years prior to that, 2017. Throughout that whole year, no, 2016, throughout the whole year of 2016, for whatever reason, 2016 or 2017, one of those years, the Lord just kept impressing in my heart the word eagle. Like so there was a lady that had said to me one time, this woman of God, she said, you are, you're like an eagle, but you're hanging around with chickens. Like you're limiting yourself. When God called you to soar, you're just staying grounded. And I was like, who she calling an eagle? And why is she calling my friends chickens? I was like, what's that about? But I realized like more and more, the word kept coming back. Like my teachers, I do dental hygiene. So my teacher would say, oh, you have eagle eyes. Like you're looking for cat, like just the different things. But the depth of it came from the end of that year when I was on my way to Georgia with my best friend. We were going down south for Christmas. And as we were driving, we kept seeing eagles in the sky. Now,
Mhm.
for you, it probably would have been like, oh, girl, what is wrong with you? It's just another bird flying in the sky. But I knew that God was talking to me. I didn't know what he was saying. So when I got to Georgia, um, I got into a heated argument with one of my cousins, and I kind of snapped, and I was like, nobody's gonna talk to me that way. Like you're not gonna cut me off, blah blah blah. And I'm usually a calm person. Like my demeanor is usually very calm, friendly. So when they saw that, they were like, Shanti, where did that come from? And during that year as well, God had been working on me with healing my heart because I was molested when I was younger. I didn't even know that there was a word for that until I had been in this women's community and they were talking about the word molestation. And I was like, wait a minute, I think I went through that. I didn't even realize that that was the word for it. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, oh my God, I was molested. This is the reason why I didn't want male doctors. I didn't want male teachers. I didn't even have boyfriends. And I thought, oh, this is just the Lord protecting me from my husband. But it was really like a defense mechanism because of that experience. And so I kind of had to go on this healing journey. But then the Lord showed me after that experience that an eagle, no matter how powerful it is, when it's been caged for so long and you finally open the cage doors, even though it has the wings and it has the power and the tenacity to soar and spread its wings, it will never leave because it's been caged for so long. And that is the way how a lot of us are as children of God who have been through trauma, whether molestation, rape, abuse, rejection, whatever it is. We're like these eagles with so much potential and purpose, but because we've been caged for so long, we're just limited and we don't know how to spread our wings. So the books that he had me write, Eagle Find Your Voice, taking back what the enemy stole was kind of going through the healing journey of trauma. And then Eagle Spread Your Wings was about the power of fasting and prayer. So he just had me on this eagle thing. And when I asked him for an official name, because I was like, Lord, this platform can't be just called Peace Essentials. Like, come on. No, nobody's going to know what Peace Essentials is. Give me another name to replace my logo because I had PE for my logo. So I was like, oh, Purposed Eagle, so that's how the name came about. So long and short of it is that's how the name and then the platform came about.
No, I love that story, because I think that it kind of shows me like how you are walking with God. And I've been recently meeting with so many people that's like walking with God. I know that there are people who say, oh, God told me this, but a lot of people are not walking with God.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I love that story because whenever I meet someone who's actually doing the walk, not just
Yeah.
talking the talk, it hits in it and it's very important. So I love that in your purpose and your walk with God, like it seems like He seems to give you different ideas for the books that you write. What would you say for this next book, which is the Bible book, which is looking at the Bible looking at business in the Bible? I'm not saying that correctly. How did you come about writing that book, and what did you see that led you to be like, this is a book that's needed?
Okay, so a lot of times, like, these books will come in like chapters. They will come in like segments. And it's just from like the some a lot of times personal development in my life. So I can give you one clear example. I remember in 2023, I always call this like my school of wisdom year, where I feel like the Lord was just really forcing me to invest in wisdom, like invest in personal development as a woman, invest in entrepreneurship, invest in that's when I started my life coaching program. Just like I'm like, okay, Lord, wait a minute. Now let's just take a little break, you know. But I feel like I was just making all these investments. But it was during that year when I started learning about investing and financial importance, not just saving, but letting your money grow for you. All of these different things. I was at work one day and I think I was listening to the book of Ruth.
Mm,
And then I was like, wow, she got a harvest. But what did she have to do to get a harvest? She had to invest. And then I'm a person that loves alliterations. So I was like, oh, vest. That's
mm,
pretty unique. That has a ring to it. She invested and then she harvested. And then I started like doing a look, I started researching the words. I was like, I wonder if they're related. Like, I wonder if vest is like an actual um word that has a meaning. And then, the word har in the beginning is like the I forget the terms right now, but I did like a real deep study. And then God was like, no, no, I just want you to pay attention that when you invest, you will harvest. And so in that time, I had an experience even when I would start investing in the stock market. I'm not like a guru on it or anything. But one thing I could tell you is that I am a person of faith. Sometimes I scare my own self because I'm like, Lord, this literally doesn't make sense. I've never seen it done. How in the world can we do this? And I remember saying, God, if, you know, I'm going to test you. Like, help me out with the stock market. And so one day I invested in an Apple stock. Um, and I felt like I needed to invest in that stock and I put my money into it. And the next day the stock went up and like the money grew. And then I pulled the money out of it like a couple of days later. And as soon as I pulled it, the stock went back down. So it was kind of like, I was like, okay, Lord. And it was just a simple lesson about investing to harvest. And then he was like, it's not just with money. If you invest in your mind and you begin to do the background investments, you'll begin to harvest. And then he had me like read the book of Ruth again, and I saw that theme in her life. And then there would be like other little stuff that I would read in the Bible, and I'm like, whoa, that could be applied to business. And, and another thing that made me actually really push to write this book was in 2024, as I said, I'm a dental hygienist, and I used to do a lot of temping. So I would go to different offices. So I was working in Greenwich for a long period of time, and I don't know if you're from Connecticut, but that's where I live. Um,
I live in New Hampshire, but I went to, Trinity College in Hartford,
okay,
Connecticut.
okay.
Yeah.
So then a little bit familiar. Um, but Greenwich is a very wealthy city or,
Yes,
or
I know.
town. And where I was living at the time in Bridgeport, is not really as wealthy. It's a big place full of potential. I think it's the largest city in Connecticut. But the potential and the financial literacy is not really there as much as it
Mhm.
is in Greenwich. So I said, Lord, I'm coming here and I'm going to glean as much as I can. I'm not just going to be cleaning these. I would have millionaires and billionaires in my seat and I would be cleaning their teeth. And for me, I'm like, Lord, there's no way I'm going to let this opportunity pass. Like, they're not coming just for a cleaning. I'm going to start asking questions. And so I would ask them, what's one tip that you would give to an entrepreneur? What is one tip you would give, to an investor or whatever the case is? And they would give me these little gems. And I'm like, well, these are actually biblical principles. Whether they know it or not, they're literally applying biblical principles and they're seeing the fruit of their labor. Because the Bible says, that. A good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. This is what
It's
these
true.
rich people are doing. You know, the Bible talks about if the clouds be full of rain, they'll empty themselves. That's Ecclesiastes 11, meaning the law of accumulation is there. If you accumulate, eventually you'll see the results. That's a biblical principle. The Bible talks about having different streams, right? And in Genesis, it talks about how the gold is good. And I'm like, are we reading the Bible and not getting all of these things? So it wasn't even that I was some big business guru. I just thought that, oh my God, this is interesting. And then I realized, Bible and Business Lens Expository is the acronym of Bible. So I was like, oh, this is a really dope title. So just little stuff like that. Um, and another thing too is as I was reading these books, these self-help books, I would realize that these philosophers, Napoleon Hill, Og Mandino, these are like people that are renowned self-help billionaire people that teach about sales. Some of them are not even Christian, but they're using principles from the Bible. So I'm like, okay, wait a minute. If these people that are not even Christians are using principles from the Bible and storylines from the Bible, and they're writing their books and they're getting millions, why is it that us Christians are not really looking at the Bible through business lens and pulling these to build wealth? So that's how the book came out. So yeah.
I wondered, would you say that it is because you were perhaps exposed to those clients of yours, and perhaps God was already working with you and making your eyes a little bit to start seeing that perhaps you were paying a little bit more attention? Because I think that for a lot of times when people read in the Bible, you're not necessarily reading it to be like, oh, this is a business like principle,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
many people might say, well, I don't really know what a business principle is. So, how would you I guess how would you guide them towards, like, saying, like, "Look at this more closely," if that makes sense?
Um, so I think it was a mix of both exposure and both God talking to me because he talks to me a lot in dreams, and that's not me saying that to sound deep or spooky, but it's just the honest truth. And there was a time I had a dream that my husband and I were in this plane and we were landing. And as we were landing over like this, it looked like the city of New York, honestly. And it was nighttime, but there were so many lights, like the city was illuminated. And for whatever reason, I was like trying to like reach over him to take a picture. Like I knew in my spirit I needed to capture that moment. I needed to capture that light. And my husband, even in the dream, was a little irritated. He's like, why are you, bothering yourself to what it's not that deep. But I knew like, no, I need to capture this. And as soon as I took the picture, all of the lights went out. And
Hmm,
then when I woke up, I asked the Lord, what does that mean? And, a lot of times when you see the word light in the Bible, it's talking about revelation or clarity. So, there's a scripture that says that the eyes of your understanding would be enlightened. Or there's another scripture where David says, Lord, thou shalt lighten my candlestick or enlighten my eyes, pretty much. And just basically asking, give me direction, give me revelation. So help me not to just look at things, but help me to look with revelation. A lot of times we think God is not speaking, but it's because we're not looking with light and we're not looking with revelation. And so from that dream, the Lord began to talk to me and he said, make sure you capture illumination, capture this light, capture revelation. I'm going to begin to speak to you. I'm going to begin to put subtle, things on your heart and don't miss these opportunities. So it kind of even goes back to what I was talking about before about why the presence of God is so important. I think people think, oh, the presence of God is just boring. It's all about worship music and reading my Bible and going to bed. But no, like God is interested in the prosperity of all angles of our life. And if he sees the good desire of your heart, me, I know that a part of my purpose is to be a kingdom financier. I want
hmm,
to be a part of the people that like my family's from Jamaica, and right now they just went through a Category 5 hurricane.
yep,
There is a lot of people in the LGBTQ community or all these not necessarily Christian communities that are funding and pumping money into the country. But why is it that Christians can't do that, to prove that our God is a God of his word that says, I give you the power to make wealth? And so I said to God, God, I'm going to begin to be sensitive. I don't want to miss any light. I don't want to miss anything. If these people that live just 15 minutes away from me in Greenwich with the same color blood and the same kind of skin and they're breathing the same air, and a lot of them are not even Christian, can accumulate this level of wealth, I need to accumulate this level of wealth. I think that that's just where all of that comes from. And it's just going back to motive. Like, I don't want to be wealthy just to have a nice house and sit down and play patty cake. I want to be able to, bless the community and do what be God's hands and feet. So that's where all of the motivation comes from.
I love that. I think that being God's hands and feet is very, I think that's what we're supposed to do. And I think that a lot of us kind of we get too comfortable, I think sometimes we get too comfortable, and I think sometimes it's just like it's reminding me of the parable of the sower and
Mm,
and to me, it's like sometimes we hear the word, we know that, we're supposed to go for it. We know, like you knew, that I'm gonna be a kingdom financier, but sometimes life things comes and it chokes it out and we let it choke it out. But it's
yeah.
really those who stayed the course. I did want to ask, like, some people might hear this and say, well, that's great, but other people might hear it and say, well, how is this different than the prosperity, gospel of, like, we're reading the Bible to see the business principles, but it just sounds like we're just preaching that as long as you read the Bible, you're gonna be prosperous and wealthy or whatever.
Yeah. Um, then I'd say this is not for them. And as hard as that sounds, um, Jesus, I've been going through this journey of reading the book of Matthew in the month of October. There's
Mm,
28 chapters, and I wanted to just, read that again. And I realized that Jesus's most common theme is he always alluded back to belief and faith and mindset. He always said, if thou canst believe, all things are possible. Your faith has made you whole. um, you know, believe and you shall see. If you believe, you shall say to this mountain, be removed. And, the opposite of prosperity is poverty. So if there's a prosperity gospel, is there a poverty gospel? I mean, gospel means good news. So is poverty good news, or is the word that says, above all, I wish that you would prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers? It's about a change of mindset. And I think that a lot of it comes from, Catholicism, Catholic people, and a lot of these, um, like, organizations that formed over the centuries that kind of came and preached the poverty, mindset, that it's okay to be poor. And when you're holy, you're poor because you're simple. But even the Jews have their revelation. When you go to Israel, you'll see that their lifestyle was completely different. And the things that Jesus says, he wants us to be, again, prosperous so that we don't have to put our mind on those things all the time. And if you notice, a lot of times when you go to churches, the testimonies, the prayer requests, the prayer lists, um, saints, I need you to pray for me because I can't pay my rent. I
mm,
need you to pay for me because I can't pay my bills. I need you to pray for me because, the doctor said this. I think being well on a whole is not just only finances. It's about, how do we steward our body? How do we take care of our body? For the ones that take care of their body, do we then say, oh, you guys are preaching a health gospel? For the ones that, take care of their spirit, man, do we say, oh, you're preaching a spirit gospel? Do it. So I think God is just concerned about our whole aspect. And once we have that mindset that he's concerned about every aspect of our lives, we'll be okay. Because when we stop praying about those things and chasing down money, I think the whole piece, the whole reason for the book and the whole reason for people talking about these things is just for education so that we can change and shift our mindset so that when we do get the money, we don't set our heart or our mind on it or act any different, but it now gives room to be able to pray for things that are more concerning and have the resources to help people that are in need of these things. And I think that that's where the heart of this book or any hopefully most people that talk this way is coming from, so I think that that's where that comes from.
For shifting back to moms now, for mom who's thinking, "Well, I want that." Like, I would like to, you know, not chase after prosperity for myself, but chase it so that, like you mentioned, being that hands and feet. And I think that, recently I've been really thinking about how the church basically what you mentioned, the church is supposed to be there. For example, the whole government shutdown thing that's happening right now. The church is
Hmm.
supposed to be the one to be like, who is in need? We're going to do. The church is stand in place of the government,
Yeah.
basically being the one to provide for that. And for the, I guess the moms is like, well, I would want that. What would be your suggestion for them?
um I think my suggestion to them would be, aside from getting in the presence of God, just looking back and seeing what do they have a heart or a passion or a drive for the most, and see how God can take that and really blow on that in a very abundant way. Because my mind goes back to the scripture of the prophet asking the woman, what do you have in your house?
Hmm.
um I think that that can be applied to a lot of moms, whether you're a stay-at-home mom or you're a working mom. A lot of times we feel like I don't really have anything to offer, especially stay-at-home moms. They think, well, I'm just a mom. That's what I'm called to be, and that's all I have. That's all to me. But I would say look into something that you're passionate about. Do you like to bake? Do you like to give back to the community? Are you good at speaking? What are the things that you're good at? What's the thing in your house? And how can God bless that in abundance so that you can be a woman that can have something for yourself, or you can be the hands and feet of Jesus, whether you're not, if even if you're not working, you can donate your money to the church or some organization, or maybe you want to help your husband and you want to be in some support towards him. I would just always go back to what is in your house. For me, I can only speak from experience. I remember a season where I was asking God, well, what is in my house? I don't know. And um I did go on a fast about it, and I did pray, and the Lord told me your voice. Your
Hmm.
voice is what's in your house. And I'm like, Lord, no, but it must be something else. Because first of all, I don't even for a long time I did not like my voice because it's very monotone. It's not as girly and high pitch. I was like, I didn't like my voice. And God was like, well, it's the one thing that you think is dingy and useless is the thing that I'm going to use. So sometimes it's not, sometimes it's the even overlooked thing. What is the thing that you're good at, but you overlook it, And so when he shared that with me, it was the end of 2022. And that's when I was like, okay, well, then it must be time to write Eagle Find Your Voice. That's where my first book came in. And then that's when I started doing podcasting because I'm like, okay, well, you know, if, if my voice is what's in my house, then I can speak on and share the word of God. And that's where that came from. And then I tied that with the purposed eagle to, you know, now get people's attention towards the community. So just what's in your house? What is in your house? I think is the main thing. What's in your house?
What is in your house? Final question. I know you have to go, but my final question has to do with your Instagram page, which says you are no longer allowed to give up. And I looked at that and I was like, what does that what does that mean? Who is that directed to? What do you want people to think about when they look at that?
Okay, so again, many, many, many assignments in life. but your purpose at the core of who you are remains the same. And I think for me, sometimes people ask me, DeShanti, what exactly is it that you do? Because you do so many different things. I do a lot of things, but I am at the core of me someone that will push you.
Mm.
If you're in my friend group and you're discouraged, I'm usually the one that will be like, "Come on, you can do it," or you know, don't give up. Um, and a lot of times that's how I start. That's how people know me for what I so even with writing books, that came about because I have a chef friend that's really good at cooking. And I'm like, well, I know that, but the world doesn't know that. Why don't you put that in a book? Come on, we're going to write a book. And then, we got to writing so at the core of who I am, I just like to see people thrive and be successful. So the nonprofit, which is the Purposed Eagle, the faith-based community that targets youth, that's something that I do. And then I have my own personal women's academy that I'm working on, by God's grace. I've been like doing a lot of mentorship cohorts since September is another thing that I do. I don't teach business necessarily there. I talk about like, wellness and overcoming trauma, and then also etiquette as well. I got certified as an etiquette consultant, but kind of just pairing those two and using that as a way of coaching as well. And then I do like, business and book consultations on the other side. There are a whole bunch of different things, but at the core of who I am, I want to see people thrive. I want to see people fulfill their purpose. So that's what that is all about. Like, you come to my page, welcome to my page. You're no longer allowed to give up. You're not going to sit here and roll in your bed 3 times a day and go eat Snicker bars all day. No, you're going to get up and you're going to be able to, you know, do what the Lord called you to do while you have time. And I think I just want that to be my brand, I guess. I want that to be what people know me as, not just the girl who's always talking about eagles, or the girl who's always writing books, or the girl who's always talking about business. You don't even I'm of the firm belief that not everybody's called to business, and that is okay. Not everybody's called to make money, and that is okay. That is just only one streamline. That's only one, I guess, targeted audience that I'm speaking to. But at the core of it is purpose, 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 like purpose. And so, even for next year's event that we're going to do, all being well, all being well, because it takes a lot of strength, tenacity, prayer, fasting, and strategy for that stuff. But I don't want it to be just business geared. I want it to be purpose geared. So there are 7 mountains of influence. Lauren Cunningham, which is an evangelist, kind of coined this whole idea of, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but like the mountain of education, the mountain of government, the mountain of family, the mountain of religion, the mountain of business, the mountain of arts and entertainment, and the mountain of media. So there's 7 mountains. And his idea is that in this life, you are called to either one or multiple of those mountains. And that's where you will thrive and that's where you'll find your purpose in. So those that are called to government, naturally, they're inclined to listening to politics, where it might tick you off and you're like, I don't even care about that. For them, that's all that they know. That's what they like. They like, international affairs, governmental protocol. They're into all of that stuff. That's the mountain that they're called to. Um, but because they only know the mountain of religion through by way of church, they're like, oh, well, I'm only called to be in church and serve in church. But maybe God might call you to the mountain of government, much like Daniel, who was a government official and helped to be in high ranking with like 3 different kings, and essentially was the one that was by Cyrus's side when Cyrus got the children of Israel freed from captivity. So that just goes to show that we are called to different mountains, and you just have to figure out what your mountain is. And I really want to hone in on that next year, all being well. For a mom, like you have your amazing podcast for Busy Moms Get It Done. You are called to a mountain of family where you're called to really empower people through your platform to see that even though I'm a mom, that doesn't limit me from getting things done. And I think that that can encourage people in the Mountain of Family that are called to be moms. Like they're amazing moms. They do it with such grace, right? The Mountain of Education, there are amazing teachers. I don't know if I'm called to the Mountain of Education as far as the school system goes. But
Yeah.
there are those that God, even though it's a low pay most of the time, you're like, I don't even understand why I'm still here. But you have a
Mm.
passion and you have a drive for kids. And it could be that God wants to elevate you to the Board of Education, to be one of the ones to write curriculums or pass laws of what can be taught to our children from what can't be taught to our children. So this is why I'm so crazy when it comes to purpose, because I'm like, if you miss that, just like how I'm able to read the Bible and look at business principles and talk to business people, and I don't want to miss these opportunities. I just want people's eyes to be awakened to not miss the opportunities that God will give you for your mountain of influence. So, yeah.
Well, on that note, and thank you so much, DeShanti. I really appreciate it. And I do believe that once we start to walk with God and truly like read the Bible, He will begin to show us things. Because I think that what you mentioned before is that not everyone is called to like go into the Bible and see like this is a business idea. But there are people who are called to go into the Bible and be like, you know what, Abraham was very rich. He was filthy rich,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want to be like Abraham. So we all have different, I think that's what I love about God. He's so personable and he's able to like look at us and be like, I want you to know this. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Uh, I found you through Instagram, but how can people find you and reach out if they want to?
Sure. Instagram is one of the main platforms that I'm on. Instagram and TikTok. YouTube as well. Is where I do a lot of my speaking long form. You can find me on my website, DeShantiGenus.org. And that's where I offer a lot of my women's programs and mentorships and courses. And then I also have thepurposeeagle.com, where you can find out a little bit more of our nonprofit and what our mission is. You can also find us on our Instagram for the Purpose Eagle Network. And I think those are the main platforms that you can find us. So,
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you to everyone who watched. Please like, share, subscribe, all the good stuff, and we will see you next time on the Busy Moms Get It Done.